Hello, hello, hello. Welcome welcome back to my channel, everyone. My name is Mish, and today I want to do a whiteboard trigger video. So I wanted to do a relaxing, kind of nostalgic vibe using whiteboard and some expo markers to try to teach you something. Now, don't worry, there is no quiz, there's no homework. It's all relaxing, all for ASMR purposes. So, don't worry about retaining this information. I'm just a nerd, and I thought it would be fun to share. And also, I really like the teacher nostalgia aspect. I loved school growing up. So I think that people who also enjoyed school and sitting in a classroom will enjoy this type of ambiance. So let's talk about today's lesson. Thermodynamics. So if you already know what thermodynamics is, you're one step ahead of me. But I will share. It is the branch of science, the study of how heat interacts with other forms of energy, temperature, work, whatnot. So this is what type of engineer I am. It is my passion, so if I get all excited, don't roast me, okay? So this is our topic of the day, and the things that I want to go over are the 3 laws plus the 0th. That'll make sense in a minute. And basic definitions. So very basic. We're keeping this simple so that anyone watching this video can follow along as they please, of course. So I don't think I really need to spray and wipe down. I could just wipe it, but I think the spray adds to it. Ooh, that's a nice spray. Got my handy dandy eraser. And with a hair on it, that's nice. Yeah, maybe I don't use the spray with this. I think that that might not be as useful as I thought it was. But that's okay. Do it for the ASMR aspect. Yeah, that looks awful. Well, luckily, I have a makeup towel right here, and I'm just going to get rid of all of that. All of the spray with that. That'll be fine. So, let's get some basic definitions out of the way, okay? So, the first word that I want to give a definition for is entropy. Now there's enthalpy and entropy, but for this lesson we are concerned with entropy. Anyone know what that means? So entropy is the measure of the amount of energy unavailable to do work. Work is the transfer of energy. So entropy is the randomness, the uncertainty, okay, in that kind of term. So it's a measure of how much energy doesn't do work. You have an object, for example, where in a perfect world, all of its amount of energy would be able to do work. But there's losses, there's entropy, there's the amount of randomness, the amount of uncertainty, where there's energy that does not get transferred into work. Okay? Leave that up there, okay? Now we're going to define something else. Absolute zero. I'm sure that you've heard this term before. It's okay if you don't know it, but this is all atomic movement. So it's the temperature at which all atomic movement stops. That's in my own words, that's not the dictionary definition. But absolute zero, which is 0 Kelvin. There's Fahrenheit, Celsius, Kelvin, and 0 Kelvin is absolute zero. So it is the lowest where all atomic movement, you know how in a gas, the atoms are dancing, they're moving pretty fast, right? Because they have a lot of heat and energy. Then there's a liquid or a middle state where the atoms are pretty moving, like they're flowing, they can move a lot, not as much as the gas. They can move a lot though. And then there's the frozen solid state where they can't move much, but it still moves. Absolute zero? Nope, that is it. That's it. So that's important to remember. Okay. Now, let's get into the laws of thermodynamics. So, for the longest time, there was technically 3, and then they added the 0th. Why they didn't just add a 4th? It's because it's important to understand the other 3. So they put it as a precursor, but there's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 laws. So let's begin with the first. Number 1. So two bodies, so not necessarily people, but just objects, okay? first is defining what equilibrium means for thermodynamics. So when two bodies are at the same temperature, they are considered in equilibrium. Okay? Very, very important. It's a huge, obviously it's a law of thermodynamics. It comes into play on every thermodynamic equation application that you have, is that two bodies in equilibrium are going to be at the same temperature. Now the second law, and that was technically, that was law 0. So this is technically law number 1. No, that was added as a precursor, like I said. So real number 1 is that energy can never be created or destroyed. Now this law comes into effect in almost every engineering class application that you would encounter. So this is also called I messed up that letter. Sorry. Forgot how to spell. It's called the conservation of energy. There's always the same amount of energy. It just is transferred into a different method. So, for example, heat energy, or everything is dispersed. So you can't get rid of energy. It just transforms into a different type of energy, potential energy. So when you are going up, up a roller coaster, and you get to the very top, you're not moving, but you have potential energy, and you can then convert, when you go right over the top of that edge, goes into kinetic energy. So that is what it means by energy cannot be created or destroyed. Okay. And then, for example, kinetic energy, when you're moving, can then be converted into heat energy through friction, which is a type of loss. So even when they say it's an energy loss, it's not just disappearing, it's being converted into heat. There you go. So, the equation for that is your total energy, your change in energy, is your heat plus the work done. Okay. Now, remember entropy that we just defined at the beginning of this? That measurement of uncertainty, the measurement of the unavailability to do work of an object? That's coming back. Law number 2. So the total entropy of the universe, so everything must increase, so go up in every spontaneous process. So entropy is always increasing. I don't want to get into the rabbit hole that is explaining this, just keep it in mind, okay? Maybe if you really like this video, I can go into a whole video talking about entropy. It may end up looking like that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he has the board and he's like, that would be me explaining entropy. So, and the second law of thermodynamics. But basically you just have to know that the equation that goes along with the second law is S equals entropy, right? Because H equals enthalpy. That's how I like write my own notes. I can have neat handwriting, but I don't always. Anyway, so your S total equals your S system plus S surroundings, and all of that is always greater than 0. You can't have 0 entropy. Not a thing, okay? So remember that and you'll be good. You don't need to wrap your head entirely around what it means that the entire entropy of the universe is always increasing. Just, it's always greater than 0, okay? Now, remember how we talked about absolute 0? It's coming back, okay? So, the last law, which is technically number 3, but like it's number 4 because of the 0th law, right? Okay, perfect. So your third law, but really 4th law, is that the entropy, which again is S, the variable is S, of a pure crystalline compound. So that's just a specific type of compound or element, a pure element at temperature equals 0 Kelvin equals 0. So at 0 Kelvin, the entropy of a pure compound is 0. If I remember, 0 Kelvin is when everything stops, all atoms stop movement, okay? So keep that in mind. Because you're gonna say, well, the last law just said that it's always greater than 0. Yeah, because we're not at 0 Kelvin. Gotcha. So, another interpretation of the equilibrium statement. So let's go back to that. So those were the laws, but let's now discuss equilibrium. Because two bodies in thermal equilibrium are always at the same temperature, and entropy is always increasing, that means that heat goes to cold. When I was in trade school, this was how we explained it. Simple, get to the point, heat goes to cold. That's it. Now, of course, it's more complicated than that, but that is the general explanation of heat transfer. When you have a body with more thermal energy and you place it next to a body with less thermal energy, the heat will transfer to the body with less thermal energy, and both will reach equilibrium where they're the same temperature. So what won't happen is this one won't give all its heat to this one, And this one will be left at a lower temperature than this one. No, they will be the same temperature. So much as there aren't other external heat sources or sinks that are taking from this source, this body. But heat goes to cold. Now technically, cold is just a lack of heat. There's no such thing as cold air coming in. You know, when you leave the door open or the window open, the cold air isn't coming in. That's not a thing. Heat is what's moving. So your heat from the air in your home is exiting, and that air is feeling that negative pressure to equalize the pressure. There's no such thing as cold. So if you want to bring that up at your next family dinner, that you learned something today, there you go. But yes, so things will always try to be at equilibrium, which is why entropy is always increasing. So it's a lot to wrap your head around. I had fun teaching this little very, very basic intro to thermodynamics. So thank you. And remember, you're loved, and you're worthy, and to give as much to the world as you wish to receive.